Do we feel all set?
I feel all set. I've got
All
my
right.
hot
We'll
tea.
do the. All right.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah. I even have a beaker.
Oh, excellent.
Hi, I'm Erik Pavesic.
And I'm Jake Livengood.
We're with MIT Career Advising and Professional Development.
We're here to help you navigate the uncertainty that comes with your career search.
Whether you're a first-year undergrad
or a PhD or a postdoc, with both of us, we cover the educational gamut of experience.
I work with first years.
And I work with grad students.
And on top of that,
we're friends.
Aw, go us.
And go you for joining us for this episode of Overcoming Uncertainty.
Through these episodes, we hope to inform, entertain,
and perhaps have a laugh or two along the way.
We're coming to you via our homes
to bring you career guidance during this remarkable time of uncertainty, a pandemic. This segment has been brought to you by the MIT Career Development Handbook, brought to you by CAPD's awesome staff with tips for first-year undergrads through PhDs and postdocs. Information on career choice, resume and cover letter examples, interview strategy, and more. Download this awesome PDF on our website. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Overcoming Uncertainty. I'm here with two awesome colleagues here today. I'm Jake Livengood at Career Advising and Professional Development. How's your morning going over there, Erik?
Hey, Jake, it's going really well. Today, we are joined by a real special guest. So, Zan, we'd love it for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work in MIT Medical.
Thank you so much, Erik and Jake. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Zan Barry, short for Susanna, and I have been a senior program manager in community wellness at MIT Medical for a long time. I've worked with a lot of students, faculty, and staff. And some of the things that I work on are doing health coaching for students, helping them sort of set their own personal well-being goals and reach them, and have an accountability buddy in me to help them get there. And teach classes on mindfulness and meditation. Sleep health is a big obsession of mine, and all kinds of things that have to do with self-care.
Great. Thank you so much for all the work you do with our MIT community. It's just very impressive. And you mentioned a little bit about some of the work you do, and certainly this is a very unique time. What kind of challenges are you most frequently seeing during this time of uncertainty?
Yes, I'm glad you brought up the word uncertainty, because it's something that we are all coping with, and that's something particularly that our human mind likes to go over again and again and again to kind of figure out the future and plan for the future. Especially at MIT, people are great modelers and planners and rehearsers. And we're at a moment now where that muscle of coping with uncertainty is getting way overused because we're just in a time of limbo right now. We're not really sure what's happening. We're not really sure what the best way to proceed is. So what I'm seeing is a lot of uncertainty fatigue, the feeling that the mind is kind of chewing on it and not able to rest. And so a lot of the programs that we're putting in place now, or trying to encourage people to participate in themselves, have to do with resting the mind from having to overthink, overplan, and overworry. And I think anything that we do to take care of that particular, we all have that proclivity. The mind is a wonderful rehearsal mechanism. It's incredible, but we need also a break, and we need to bring in other influences during the day, or else we get really fried. So.
Oh my goodness. So uncertainty fatigue, I certainly feel like I've encountered that day in and day out, and every night actually. So, for someone like me, but even someone who's, younger, maybe in their 20s, what might be some tips you have for dealing with uncertainty fatigue, or just overcoming uncertainty in general?
Yeah. So we're in a moment right now where there are some number of things that we do have control over and some number of things that we don't. And so the first real, I think, choice point is, do I have control over this or don't I? Can I put a boundary around it? Is it something that's within the scope of, my own decision making? And focusing on those things, this is a time when generally people need to break things down into smaller pieces and create more structure than usual. Even people who like planning and structure, this is a moment where planning and structure can be super helpful. So making things manageable sizes, small, incremental, bite-sized kinds of goals are more appropriate during a time of where the future just has yet to unfold. We know that the future's going to happen, and people are making very smart kinds of scenario modeling plans around MIT in particular. So we know there will be a future. We just don't know what it is yet. And so this is a moment to really stay in the here and now, the small, the incremental, and the kind of bite-sized goals.
Thank you so much for that. And it's something I've tried to remind myself of too, that to control things that I can control and try to amplify those. And I really appreciate that suggestion of focusing on planning and the kind of micro level of that as well. Mm-hmm. One thing that kind of is a foundational piece of our lives, and kind of if it's done well, it sets our day up nicely, and if it's not, it can ruin it sometimes, it seems. And that's the topic of sleep. And so when we had reached out to you to join us on this episode, you had kind of initially mentioned that was a topic of prominence right now and affecting people. So could you tell us a little bit about your experiences with MIT students and the topic of sleep?
Yes. So I'm so glad you asked about it, because it's my favorite thing in this mortal coil is sleep. And people in general are actually getting a bit more sleep overall. So we're seeing people, at least people who are home and feeling that they're in a stable, safe location, are getting more sleep overall. That being said, the quality of sleep can be affected by times of prolonged stress, extreme stress. And so people may be getting more fragmented sleep, like they're waking up in the middle, or they're waking too early, some people, or, having difficulty tossing and turning before they fall asleep at night. So those three different kind of ways of feeling that your sleep is not all you'd like it to be are all happening. And something else that's starting to emerge from people's reports is that their sleep cycle might be getting really shifted. So sleeping later and later because you can, and then that pushes the nighttime sleep drive much later, and people might be staying up past where they'd optimally like to be going to bed. So people are just getting a little shifted, and I'm starting to hear like, I feel like I'm turning into a vampire. Like I'm really, sleeping later and later and missing the day kind of. So that's the other pattern that I see, is that sleep shift.
And, like right now we're having difficulty, just exacting control over certain things. And so I kind of feel like, right now with sleeping, even though we might be shifting our kind of hours and kind of getting into those like vampiric hours, so to speak, what can people do? Like, what are some tips or resources that people can do to better their sleep habits?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, this podcast could go on for 3 hours. I love this topic so much, but I will try to keep it succinct. So the first fundamental thing that I would want anyone to take into their heart is, don't lose sleep over losing sleep. If you are having a hard time sleeping right now, just, don't chase the butterfly. It will come back. Sleep drive is built into us. It's so hardwired that you really, as long as you kind of let it naturally come back, your sleep drive will reemerge really strong. And so if you're having a few nights of tossing and turning and you start to get freaked out, like, what if it happens tomorrow? What if it happens for the rest of my life? That kind of feeling. First, just repeat the mantra, don't lose sleep over losing sleep. Okay. But the second thing that I would say is, You know, a lot of people have heard of melatonin. They know of what that melatonin is, this darkness hormone that, you know, tells your body that it's getting dark, and it starts to secrete more and more as the light gets, you know, goes down at night. And we want it to sort of be peaking around the time that we're getting ready to, you know, wind down to go to bed. But there's another hormone that's got an inverse relationship with melatonin, cortisol, this stress hormone that is meant for action and for the body to, you know, fight or flee. And so when you look at a nice kind of inverse relationship, when melatonin is peaking at night and your body's being told it's getting dark and you're, you know, that kind of understimulation, restful state starts to come in, you also want your cortisol to be dropping nice and low. So they have this nice, and then in the morning when your melatonin is dropped off, your cortisol kind of kicks you out of bed, just says like, you know, get up, and starts to peak a little bit. So when we have these two working in concert, right, there's one going up as the other's going down. And people may know that they can increase their natural pharmacy of melatonin in their brain by dimming the lights in their room an hour or an hour or two before they want to go to bed. So just using maybe one reading lamp or something, you know, start to dim things down. I certainly would recommend not watching the news or reading the news before bed. It's a little bit like watching a scary movie, and that'll bring your cortisol up, you know. So I would save the news for a time of day that's got a little buffer zone around it. I wouldn't do it first thing in the morning because it kind of sets the tone for the day in a weird way, and I wouldn't do it last thing at night. So that's a cortisol related recommendation. If you also want to promote melatonin, some people are worried about how much time they're spending on screens. So closer to bedtime, smaller screens, dimmer screens, dim the brightness down as much as you can. You could use the night shift mode. The research on that is mixed, but, you know, sure, you know, why not? And if you can put away the screen and just listen to a podcast or just read a book, that time, or do a craft, you know, something before bed is a nice way to allow your natural melatonin, the natural pharmacy, to kind of optimize melatonin. To decrease cortisol, which is, you know, heightened during times of prolonged stress, at least for most of us, the things that have been studied to decrease cortisol: practicing a relaxation technique, a meditation, a breathing technique, yoga. People are, you know, at MIT are so savvy often on what these techniques are. There are things like belly breathing, mindfulness practice, Tai Chi, you know, a little something that helps bring your arousal system down. The other things that are associated with lower cortisol: listening to music you like, music you personally find relaxing. The research does not say any one genre of music. It's just what you personally find relaxing. There's some research that regular dancing, you know, dancing on a regular basis is good for reducing cortisol. The research on laughter and humor says that it should be mirthful laughter at something that's intended to be funny, not mean laughter at someone's expense. But if you have funny videos, funny friends, funny shows that you like keep those things on your short list, in your toolkit of ways to reduce cortisol. And certainly if you're a person who likes hugs or touch and you're in a place where you can get a hug, that is another cortisol reducer. Just holding the hand of the person that you care about, you know, can lower those stress hormones.
One of the things I find really interesting about this current time is you mentioned a little bit earlier in your answer about worrying about worrying. Yeah, this idea of I'm worried that I'm worried, and I'm worried how I feel this way, and it's this weird cycle that can spiral out of control.
Yeah.
You mentioned the idea of possibly being able to do 3 hours on the topic of sleep. Are there any kind of favorite resources you have to go to check out more information, or any good videos, any go-tos for you?
Yes, well, so I would recommend that everyone start with the community wellness sleep page. So come over to wellness.mit.edu and check out our sleep page. What you'll find there is a little bit of information about sleep. Everyone in the MIT community can get access to a free app. If you have insomnia or your sleep cycle has gotten really shifted toward vampire mode, there's a free subscription that we've bought as a blanket subscription for the MIT community. You can get information there. You can listen to relaxation audio files. You can call the MIT Sleep and Relaxation line if you want, which is 617-253-CALM, 2256 is that last. 4 digits. And that's a 3-minute recording guiding you through some systematic letting go of the body, muscular tension, releasing the thoughts, breathing. And for someone who just wants to change the story that's going in their brain for a moment, listening to a guided relaxation could be incredibly helpful because it just kind of snaps us out of the spiral, as you say, worrying about worrying. But there's a protocol that I often recommend also to MIT students called the Rise Up Protocol, which is meant to help you get up in the morning. So one of the best things for quality sleep is getting up around the same time each day. And I don't want to make anybody perfectionist about it. If it's within an hour, so, good. Let's not get super, anxious about sleep. But if you think about getting up at, let's say, 9 a.m. on a Friday and then 1 p.m. on a Saturday, and then, it's almost like traveling to Hawaii, from Boston to San Francisco to Hawaii, and then back to Boston on Monday. And that kind of social jet lag can be incredibly disruptive for your night's quality of sleep. And so getting up around the same time has huge benefits. The other thing that's a huge benefit is that often the more sunlight you get before noon, the better quality sleep you get at night. So if you're getting up even 10 a.m. daily, you're still getting 2 great hours of sunlight before noon. Even on a cloudy day, the sun is, helpful for your circadian rhythm. So sit by a window when you eat breakfast, study by a window, and everything you get before noon is good. The stuff you get after noon is good too, but the stuff you get before noon is powerful for your circadian rhythm, especially. So this Rise Up protocol is to help people get out of sleep, and you could Google it, or I could send you an article. The R is for refrain from hitting the snooze button. I'm just going to go through the R. The R is for refrain from hitting the snooze button. That means don't because those little chunks of sleep, that 10 minutes that you get after, sequentially, it's just crappy quality sleep. First of all, it's not like you're getting true restful recuperative sleep. And it just staves off the inevitable. And it just can make you feel more sleep inertia, more grogginess when you finally do get up. So the recommendation is, instead, if you're going to set multiple alarms, set them all for the same time and make yourself get up and turn off all those alarms. And you can get these really mean alarms that you have to go in the bathroom and scan a QR code, and, or the one that starts shredding a $20 bill as soon as you're late to get to it. There are just some real doozies out there. So I highly recommend this getting up at the same time or around the same time thing.
That is so amazing. And so I have a question that is really, how did you get interested in sleep? I always think about this is a web series that is sometimes viewed by, younger individuals who are just trying to figure out their career direction. Mm-hmm. So can you share just a little bit about how you got involved with this discipline? Because it's incredibly fascinating. You seem to be very, related to it. So I'd love to hear more about your own sort of pathway into this field.
Sure. So I came to MIT 17 years ago and was tasked with helping students manage their, learn about their well-being and manage their well-being. And I started to see that sleep was this huge topic, that people really wanted to take shortcuts around sleep. People were like, can't we invent a pill for that? Why do we have to waste, 7 or 8 of our hours of our, lives in this prone state that seems totally useless, And I started to think, well, what is the value of sleep? Like, how can I answer these skeptics with their excellent questions about why bother? Why bother making sleep a priority? And the more I started to study it, the more down the rabbit hole I got. I am a huge sleep nerd. I subscribe to sleep podcasts. They're great. There's a great podcast called Sleep Talk out of Australia that I love. But so I started to study sleep, its effects on physical health, mental health, cognitive performance, athletic performance. It is the single most powerful, free, cost nothing thing that we can possibly do for our overall survival and well-being and flourishing. And I was like, all right, so it's available to everybody, it affects everybody, and it's good for everybody. And it's kind of, the sleep research is a little bit in the mode of early ocean studies where they don't know that much about the depths of sleep and the way that it works in the brain. And, it's still very much a growing, exploration kind of area. So I ended up going back to school a few years ago for a doctorate, and I ended up writing my dissertation on college sleep health, and especially how it affects mental health, because I'm a clinical psychologist. And the connection between sleep and mental health protection is just so compelling and so incredible that I think I'll just be a lifer. I will just love it and study it for the rest of my life.
That is so awesome. And it's sometimes unpredictable how we navigate things, how things come to be. And so cool how you even went back to, more training and sought out topics with your thesis, your dissertation about this. That is just amazing.
Yeah.
We're so fortunate at MIT to have such an expert on our campus.
Thank you. I have loved every question that every student has ever asked me. Has helped me just grow. And I, couldn't think of a better group of skeptics that I would love to work with than the MIT crowd.
So, Zan, is there anything else that you would like to add or that we should know?
Let's see. I guess I will just say a word about the connection between self-care and let me back up and think about this. I'm trying to think of a way to say people don't need to feel guilty that self-care is hard right now, but that every little bit helps. I guess that's what I would say. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would like to say that self-care is incredibly important and also sometimes hard to do. And so I would also not lose sleep over, well, I didn't do my self-care thing today. There are just times when the obstacles to self-care will seem hard. And so the best self-care in that moment is to forgive yourself for not doing whatever it was you had hoped to do for self-care, and to have huge self-compassion, huge mammoth self-compassion for doing your human best with whatever it is that you're facing.
Well, Zan, thank you so much for all of this insight, all of this information. And we are truly honored and fortunate to have you as part of the MIT community. But also one thing that's helpful is that this will now be seen by a bunch of other people, maybe even outside of the MIT community. And so this is definitely some helpful information and guidance. So we thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks to you. And I hope next time we get together, it's at Clover in Kendall Square over like a hibiscus iced tea.
Yes.
We can all be together.
It's on us. It's on, awesome. I will speak for Erik. It's on Erik. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. I am perfectly fine with that. I think I might actually have like a gift card to there.
Oh, there you go.
Sold. Yeah. I'm there.
You can get the iced tea and I'll get the lunch or something, because awesome. Absolutely that would be so cool. Absolutely.
Special thanks to Zan Barry, Senior Program Manager of Community Wellness at MIT Medical. Links to all of these resources are located down in the description.
We thank you for joining us today on Overcoming Uncertainty.
Be sure to check out our future episodes and subscribe to the CAPD YouTube channel.
We also interview various people to see how they've worked through the weirdness.
For future help, check out CAPD's website. MIT students and postdocs can make an appointment on Handshake.
It's an honor to partner with you. And until next time,
be kind to yourself.
Be kind to others.
And we wish you the best.
I'm like a bad penny. You can't get rid of me.